This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-commerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It is my pleasure to welcome our next incredible guest, Vera Modenova from Flowwow. Welcome to the pod.
Hi, Jason. Nice to meet you. Thank you for this podcast.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And you are based in London, correct?
Yeah, I'm living in London for the last 3
And you
years.
love it?
Oh, yeah, it's a perfect city. It's really great because you have an opportunity to live in the worldwide
Yes.
capital. It's a really big one, but on the other hand, you can live just like in a small village.
Yes, once you get out of London Central, I've been to London, and man, it's a pretty crazy city, really expensive. Actually, in Europe, we went to multiple cities in Europe, and apart from Switzerland, London was the most expensive city we visited in Europe. And we went
Yeah.
to France, we went to Paris, we went to Italy, we traveled all over Europe, and man, London is very expensive, isn't it?
It's absolutely true. But this year I was the first time to Florida, and I understood that London is not the most expensive city in the
Yes,
world.
yes.
Miami, I don't know, it's awfully
Yeah, Miami
expensive.
is crazy too. Although we love going there, and the weather makes it worthwhile, and the rooftop bars, and the Latin food, and the Latin music. Yeah, Miami is. We love going there. We could never live there. Fortunately, we have friends that live there that we can stay with and visit. But yeah, to live in Miami, you need to be very wealthy to live in Miami, I think.
Absolutely.
Listen,
Absolutely.
it's really good to have you on the podcast, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about Flowwow, how it came to be, etc. But before we even get into that, why don't we talk about how you came to be in the e-commerce space in the first place? Because everybody comes into our industry in a slightly different way, a different pathway. So why don't you share with me how you came to be in e-commerce?
It was a nice story because when I came to Flowwow, I was a student. I've been in a university on the third level, and I was only 21 year old. Actually, it was my first big job, and I just understood that I hadn't to have some hard skills to enter Flowwow because it was a small startup. I was the third person in company, so only soft skills rules in this stage.
Wow, amazing. And the cool thing is you started from the ground up in FlowWow, head of customer happiness for a year and a half, and then pretty rapidly got promoted to chief operating officer, which you've been for the last 11 and a half years. So you must have made quite the impression on the founders or the leaders of the company because you got promoted pretty young, right?
Yeah, I also think so because they had to give me a chance. So then I had to go to university. I had to be not 24/7 on my job because I needed to study also. Yeah, I don't know why this happened actually. I've also asked this question for the founders, but I think it just was the match when I came to the team because we were more than just colleagues. We were really like good friends for the first 5 years. So we were working together all days, all nights, and it was perfect time.
Wow, amazing. And you guys now are a pretty large company. You're based out of Budapest and you're a marketplace platform similar to Amazon or eBay or any other global marketplace. But it seems, and look, I've never used FlowWow before as a marketplace. I don't have exposure to it, so I have to go with what's on the tin and what's on the website. But it feels like FlowWow was always designed to be a hyper local marketplace. So instead of trying to be like this big international marketplace that serves every country on the planet, hyper local, focused on local cities, local merchants operating in local cities. And the data shows you support over 15,000 local stores and brands operating in over 1,000 cities worldwide. So that's pretty impressive. So was the goal always to create a hyper local marketplace? Was that always the idea?
Yeah, that was all the idea. But the first idea was to make a marketplace only within flowers, within the florists. And we have changed our mind, I think, 4 years ago, something like this. And we started to be a gift platform. But it does include that we stopped working with the local sellers. So our main aim is to support small local businesses to help them get new orders. And we do not have actually big companies whom we work with. We don't know. we don't like it. It's quite easier for us to find small businesses, small florists, for small people who are making now cakes at home, just for example, and we know how to do our job good within them. For example, we have a mobile app for our sellers, and of course, we have a web interface. But small businesses don't like computers, they don't like web, they use only mobile apps, and it really helps. And in this way, we were supporting our mobile app for last 10 years. We developed it. And now when the big company comes to us and he wants, for example, API to join his own CRM system, it's quite difficult for us because we really developed our mobile app for sellers for 10 years and we gave lots of our resources there. And that's why it's quite easier for us to work with small businesses.
And were you like, if I think of a almost like an artisan marketplace, which is what like the bucket that I would put you guys in. It's a local artisans marketplace. It's not a marketplace that you're trying to compete with Amazon for home electronics or laptops or things like that. We're talking about oftentimes bespoke made products, right? We're talking about, like you said, flowers, custom flower arrangements, pastry shops, handmade goods, jewelry, local clothing brands, farm shops like direct to consumer farm stores, things like that. So I think of you as an artisan marketplace more than anything else. And like before I knew you existed, obviously I'd heard of Etsy. So I think most people have heard of Etsy. It's probably I would assume it's probably the world's most well-known artisan marketplace. And when you made that initial pivot, were you thinking of the Etsy model when you said, "Hey, we want to go hyper local," and as opposed to being a purely online marketplace, we're here to represent local brick and mortar businesses and make sure that they can get their goods sold easily online and internationally. And I guess also a lot of these small businesses, they might not even have a website of their own. They might not be doing e-commerce on their own already anyway. And so to get them more exposure in the digital realm, you feel a really important need for small artisan sellers.
Yeah, first of all, you're absolutely right about Etsy. It's, I think, the most similar company for us. It's the same market, the same idea, local sellers, lots of gift items. So it's really quite similar. Yeah, if we're talking about small businesses who are not digital, we started 10 years ago and there wasn't so popular, for example, Shopify, where you can easily register, have your own website and do everything. It wasn't an opportunity for small businesses, but we were. So they just get within us and they got their digital page on the website, on mobile app. And as for me, the most expensive part for small businesses is marketing. So it's okay to have your own website, even with now social networks like Facebook or Instagram, but you need to get traffic, you need to get customers, and it's very expensive in the e-commerce world. So marketplace like us, like Etsy, we solve this problem for sellers. I think that is the reason why they are joining us.
Yeah, and look, I think even the social platforms are trying to figure this out. Famously, TikTok has probably figured this out better than most social platforms with TikTok Shop. And so I think they're trying to marry the social experience with the shopping experience and to effectively become a marketplace too. But I think it's easy to get lost when you have tens of millions of social platform users or hundreds of millions of social platform users or even billions of social platform users. It Most social users don't go to these social platforms primarily to shop, right? That's the difference. They're going there to have a social experience. They're going there to consume content. They're going there to enjoy content from their favorite creators that they follow, that they're there to be entertained. They're there to be maybe be educated, but they're not necessarily going there specifically to buy something. Whereas if they come to an Etsy store or if they come to your website and they like a specific product made by a local artisan, like they're going there to shop. Similar to the mindset when someone goes and visits Amazon, right? They're not going there to browse. They're not necessarily going there to be inspired. They're going there to shop. They're going there to buy something. And so, like, I feel like the intent when someone hits a marketplace like yours, I feel like the intent is very different than the intent when someone first goes to a social platform.
Yeah, I absolutely agree here with you. And I see here was one more, not my problem, and how said probably, but if you're TikTok, if you're Facebook, if you're Instagram, it's not your focus to make a great shopping service. Your focus is to make social networks. So you make your products, you make your developments, make your team to work on metrics that are connected with social network, but not with e-commerce. And it's quite difficult to have a focus to such big markets like social network and e-commerce. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I think the Chinese have mastered it. I don't think anyone else and no other culture in the world, certainly not any Western cultures, they have not nailed the super app model yet. If we look at WeChat, so my wife is Chinese Vietnamese, and in terms of family communication, in terms of purchasing, in terms of online shopping, etc. Chat is truly a super app. Like it does everything. It's a digital wallet. It's a literally you can pay government fees. You can do everything in the WeChat app, right? You can get home delivery of food. It almost combines Uber combined with every other app that you can think of. It combines it under one roof, and that's been very successful for them, including live shopping. Live stream shopping is possible through WeChat. Now, that is pretty unique in the world in terms of the level of penetration and success that they have seen in China and the greater Asia region and the Chinese dominated Asian regions. But for some reason, we seem to not have been able to figure that out yet in the West. And even in Europe and Eastern Europe, we haven't seemed to been able to figure that out yet. So we still have a scenario where marketplaces like yours, marketplaces like Amazon coexist, platforms like TikTok coexist with Facebook and Instagram and everything else. And now we have platforms like Whatnot for live stream shopping, and they're all separate applications. They're all separate apps on our smartphone. And I'm not sure how long that will last and when the first true super app will emerge in the West, but I think it's a very interesting dichotomy and it's a very interesting challenge for app developers in the West to try to replicate WeChat's global success, especially among the Asian community. What's your thought?
Yeah, that's a very interesting opinion because to me, any big West corporation would like to be like Alibaba because it's fantastic. You control every sphere of life. That's really perfect. As for me, that could happen something new within AI services like ChatGPT, for example, or Gemini. I don't know, maybe someone new who will appear this or next year, doesn't matter. Because as for me, it's the only way to change people's mindset in the West countries, in the West world, because something like ChatGPT can bring all e-commerce services in one place. It's really could happen. And you know that people now not Google, they are chatting, they ask questions there. And some people like Zoomers, for example, it's very popular within them. So it could happen something new here, something incredibly new. But I'm not sure that any company in big corporation will be like Alibaba. It's a very, very unique thing, as you said. I absolutely agree here.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And when you guys first started up, what was your target demographic and what was your target, like where were your first target regional markets, and how did you decide how did you decide which type of merchants you were going to go after? How did you decide which merchants in which markets in which regions, which cities you were going to target first? How did you make that priority list, that force ranked list of who you were going to pursue first? Because the challenge with a marketplace is you have to grow the supply side and the demand side at a very similar rate. Otherwise, one or the other side starves, right? If you start driving traffic to a platform without many suppliers, then people won't come back. But by the same token, it's difficult to onboard suppliers until you can prove enough demand on the platform to say, look, it's worthwhile for you to integrate with us. It's worthwhile for you to sell on our platform because we're going to bring traffic to you. We're going to bring a new cohort of potential customers to your virtual door, and we're going to provide the technology to smooth that transaction end to end at the same time. So we don't expect you to be, technical experts to be able to take part in our platform. So that's a really compelling pitch, especially a hyper local pitch. Like that's a very compelling pitch, but delivering on it is really difficult, because I've helped people in the development of marketplace technology before, and it is trying to get the balance right between buyers and sellers, demand and supply. Trying to get that balance right is really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what's was the first chicken or egg. It's always a problem for all marketplaces. You need suppliers, you need sellers to provide some choice to the clients, but sellers do not want to register on your website because they not don't have any orders. So it's really like a chicken or egg. We were really popular in post-Soviet Union countries. That's the place where we started. And the next big country for us was the United Arab Emirates. It's quite international country, I would like to say. Actually, for example, you do not need to have Arabic localization. We still do not have it. And that's not a problem for Dubai, for Abu Dhabi, because people from all over the world live there and lots of different cultures, lots of different mindsets. The next country big for us was Spain. I think it's quite the same reason because lots of people who are speaking Spanish all over the world. Spain was the biggest country in the world just 2000 years ago. It's not so much long. And we have a rule for ourselves that we need to start from the biggest cities in the country when we explore a new market. And we need to have at least 5 sellers and I think about 50 items to provide. But we should be sure about quality of these sellers, of these products, about prices, about content, about photos, about everything. So to make people love it. And that's our usual strategy to enter any new market. For example, we started to scale in Poland this year just really actively, and it was just like a secret for us. We hadn't know what to do there. And quite a big surprise that it grew about 3 times per year. Um, and we also started just with big cities. So every time when we enter a new market, we take big cities, we find at least 5 sellers, we upload at least 50 items. We help every seller to make their contact actually perfect. Sometimes we're using manually AI here to make photos better or to make the content, to make description better, just to make people really like it. And after it, we start testing traffic, we start track customers and look about on our economy, unit economy, how it works. In some countries, we need to do some localization first. If we're talking about localization, of course, it's not only about languages, but language is the first step. For example, to enter Poland market, we had
You have to do
to make
Polish,
a
yeah.
Poland. Yeah, we had to do Polish. There was no choice. And only after we see some effect, when we see first orders, when we see first reviews, how sellers work, how can we track them, when we count our unit economy. Only after it we can scale and make some other localization, for example, local payment methods, local marketing advertisement. It's also very difficult from country to country.
Yeah, because you have to localize not only the language of the app for those customers, but then you have to have local payment methods, you have to have local marketing, it's a heavy lift. And one of the other challenges I think is that the countries who have a bazaar model of selling, meaning that they have always had hyper local marketplaces where lots of vendors come to into say a town square or a local bazaar of shops and set up their market stalls. It's a very common way of selling here in Mexico, for example, is having local market stalls, especially on the weekend, having an entire section of town that is like market stalls, right? And we were in Turkey last year, we were in Morocco last year, etc., and we saw that if we look at Istanbul, if we look at many of the cities that we traveled to, both in Turkey and in Morocco, the concept of the bazaar it's still an entrenched part of the culture. And so it feels almost like if you could have boots on the ground, because they'll have 500 or 1,000 stalls set up in a bazaar, and they'll come in, they'll set up at 6 in the morning, and then they'll pack back down again at 5 at night or 6 at night. It's crazy. And this can be everything from hand carved wooden goods, it can be fruits, vegetables, seeds, it can be all sorts of handmade goods, it can be jewelry, it can be anything, and furniture, whatever. And I feel like maybe one of the ways you can bridge that gap, and again, I'm not trying to tell you how to run your business. It feels if you could have boots in the ground in economies where the bazaar model is completely normalized, like it's literally a part of the culture, then you could probably onboard 500 artisans in one hit if you could go to these bazaars and talk to these individual sellers, because 99% of the sellers in these bazaars do not do direct e-commerce in any way. They don't have a Shopify store, they don't sell online, like they sell goods in person wherever they sell. Like they might even have a physical store, a physical shop that then they also go to the bazaar on the weekend and sell at the weekend, but they don't do digital sales. That's not what they do. And so it seems like that's a great potential expansion opportunity for you guys.
I would like to say that it just seems because actually in London, for example, markets, bazaars are really popular. Every Saturday, every Sunday, in different boroughs, in different districts, you can find them, and just the same thing. You can find anything there. And I tried to speak to some of the sellers on local markets, and usually it's people from another mindset because, as we saw, it's quite easier for us to get sellers who know about digital. For example, they have their Instagram shop. Why
Yes.
not? And it's quite easier to contact them to get an explanation. Just call them, chat them, explain how to download the Flowwow app and why they need it, and they understand better. But when you come to these bazaars and markets, people usually are quite there, yeah, and they may have not new phone. It's good if they have
Yes.
smartphone, but sometimes they even don't have it, and you're trying them to explain it is an internet, digital shopping online. It's very difficult. But some big cities, it's really help us when we have people who are just on boots going through shops, not through the markets. The markets is a little bit another thing, but through just shops, for example, we see some beautiful florist shop. Why not? And went there and we speak. It's easy to find the owner there usually, and it works effectively. So it's online attraction of sellers and offline, but offline through the shops, real shops.
And going talking face to face with the
Yeah.
owners of these shops, and because they're the decision maker at the end of the day, and it's difficult to form a relationship if you're just speaking to an employee that's working at the front desk. It's very difficult to form a relationship, whereas you really need to speak to the proprietors of these establishments, right?
Yeah, and that's the reason why it's easier to work with the small businesses, as I said before. So it's easier to find the person who is the owner and to speak to him. It's not a problem. You can't speak to the owner, I don't know, of
Yeah,
Amazon,
impossible.
but you,
Yeah, it's going to be
yeah, but you
difficult
easily
to get
can
through to
find
Jeff.
the owner small shop. Absolutely, I think it's impossible. Yeah, so small businesses are nice. We really love them, and it's nice to support them.
And as of today, as of 2026, January 2026, where are the countries that you are the strongest right now? And where are you growing? Which countries are you growing in the fastest right now?
I think the fastest one is Poland, but we just started to scale it actively in the end of 2024. So just 1 year and a half, something like this. It's not too much. That's why it's growing really fast and really easy it's going. I hope it will be the same in the next year. But our biggest countries right now, United Arab Emirates and Spain. I'd like to say that we had some problems with scaling in Turkey and in the United Kingdom. It's quite difficult for different reasons. For example, in United Kingdom, it's not difficult to scale in London because it's international city, lots of people from all over the world, and you can find any culture you want, any mindset you want. But for the Turkey, we entered Turkey because we saw that there is one big company which is quite old and it's like monopolist. It's the only one who sells flowers and gifts in Turkey. And it's not modern, it's not really user friendly interfaces. And we thought it will be easy. But when we entered the site and we got some insights through Turkish market, we understood that we were not right. It's quite difficult to scale there. The first thing that Turkish economy is not the best in the world nowadays. For the last 2 3 years, it has big problems. And because of this monopolist, it's not user friendly, but we're not sure that Turkish people need it in user friendly interface like Flowwow.
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense. And what is the next, if you think ahead 6, 12, 18 months from now, what are the other countries? It sounds like you're targeting for now. It sounds like you're really heavily targeting Europe and the Middle East. So is Saudi on your radar, for example, or other European and African countries on your radar? Like what areas are you focusing on over the coming couple of years?
Yeah, we are actually almost ready with the localization for Saudi. That is also the big market, and they have different competitors there, and they're all really nice. They're quite big, and their scale pretty good in this country. So we want to start our business in Saudi. I think it will take about 4 or 5 months more, and we will do it till the end of this year. And also we're scaling now in Brazil. It also works good, but it has big problems with the repeated orders with the LTV of the clients. That is the thing we need to fix there this year. We wanted also to go to Mexico. I hope that we'll find any resources to do it this year. And of course, the main thing is the United States of America. We're trying to do our first steps there since 2025, but we understand that we need really lots of money to scale in this market. And our strategy is that we don't go for investments right now. We want to have a positive unit economy on different other markets to show that we can do our job good, that the economy is positive, and that we can attract people and that we can make them come back to us. And only after that, we want to go to investment money and to start scale in the United States of America. Really cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big market, big opportunity, but very expensive market to get into, and obviously lots of very successful marketplaces already operating in the U.S. So super challenging market to penetrate. But man, it's a big carrot up for grabs for sure in the North American market. But I think Mexico is a market that's totally dominated by marketplaces. There's not a lot of direct D2C and B2C e-commerce websites here that are popular. The country is almost exclusively already dominated by marketplaces. If we think who's the most successful online merchants in Mexico, it's Amazon, it's Mercado Libre, and it's Coppel, and they're all three marketplaces. So
Ah, yeah,
yeah,
really.
the interesting thing is I think even Coppel, which is number 3 in Mexico in terms of marketplaces, I think they did something like $9 billion in sales last year. So they're doing very well. I think you'll find a friendly reception in Mexico because it's already a very accepted way of doing business online is the digital marketplace here. And it feels Mexico skipped a lot of the individual seller D2C brands, D2C e-commerce websites, and we jumped straight to the marketplace model here because it's a low trust society, right? And so the reality is it's very hard to build trust online as an individual brand selling things if people don't know who you are, if they don't recognize your name, if you don't have physical stores here like Coppel does. Like Coppel has thousands of physical stores here, and when they launched their marketplace, it was instantly trustworthy because everybody knows who Coppel is here. Everybody knows who Mercado Libre is here. Everybody knows who Amazon is here. So they come with trust built in. And then also logistics in Mexico are very similar to a lot of Latin America, which is that there isn't always the logistical capabilities in this country are it's still very immature in that respect. And also it's complicated by the fact that not everybody has a street address. Some
Oh,
sometimes they have a pathway or a walkway address because if you have a hillside full of houses, for example, there are no streets up there. There are walkways. Almost think of it almost like favelas in Brazil, for example. There might be one street that goes up a hillside, but then coming off of that street, there are hundreds of walkways that lead to hundreds of houses. And so you don't have a street address, you have a walkway address. And if your logistics partners don't understand that and they don't know how to deliver locally, it's gonna be a real friggin' problem. And so you have to have local logistics providers to get stuff into your customers' hands. It's a super interesting market because as someone who grew up in the United States, lived in New Zealand for almost 30 years, and then has been living in Mexico since 2023, like it was such a steep learning curve for me to understand how things operate in this country.
yeah, the same thing is for Saudi. There are also no street addresses. They just make a pin on the
Yes,
map and show to the courier. It works. I don't know how,
yes, it's
really works. Yes, I think that's the thing of localization, what we were talking before. So it's not only about languages, really, not payment methods, some local things. It was a surprise for me that Mexico works in the same way as Saudi, but we're now making solution for Saudi, so I hope that will be perfect for Mexico also.
yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. And when we think about the future, are you thinking about category expansion in addition to regional expansion? Is it like I know you specialize in certain artisan items today, but like when you think about, I mean, obviously it's natural to think of regional expansion, but category expansion can be a significant driver of growth in markets where you already have trust, right? Amazon really started out just as books. Once they built up the trust, now Amazon can sell anything to anybody anywhere and they're trusted, right? It's crazy. They started out heavily focused on one or two categories, and now they have 1,000 categories, and now they do B2B in addition to B2C. And so it's a super interesting concept of how do we expand in the most efficient way possible, right? And sometimes category expansion is easier than regional expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. It's quite a difficult question for me. What's easier, geographic or category expansion? Because both of them are not easy to go. I think that 4 or 5 years ago, we just made all categories on Flowwow you can even want to have. So the seller came with clothes. We said, yes, okay, perfect. With the I don't know, pet food, for example, why? You can register on Flowwow and sell it here. But after we understood that we're not focused, we were just in focused and it wasn't good for us. So we focus now only on gift items, gift products, but there are also lots of different types. I think we now have about 20 product categories, but not in all countries. When we scale on a new market, we first go with flowers, and after it we start adding new product categories. For example, I don't know, something sweet or handmade things. But it's all about gifts. There was a funny story actually this summer. We launched an alcohol category on Flowwow because Spain, France, Italy, it's a good idea to have a bottle of wine like a
Yes.
gift. But there was a problem because we scaled it on all our markets and we just haven't thought that it will affect the United Arab Emirates, for example, because alcohol in United Arab Emirates is not a good idea to have on e-commerce on your
Yes.
website. And we had a very big problem with the SEO optimization in Google. It just dropped down awfully. And when we understood it, also clients, sellers, they were not happy with our solution. So it's again getting back to localization
Yes.
in some way. Uh, but yeah, we're trying different product categories. I think that we are going to make in Europe more importance on some handmade things like decor, candles, something nice for your home, for yourself, because it helps us to get orders not just for other people as a present, but as a present for yourself.
Yeah, no question about that. Yeah, for sure. Obviously, gifts aren't only necessarily for others. We can pamper ourselves. Yeah, it makes absolute sense. If you could change anything, if you could sprinkle fairy dust on your industry, and let's just say the artisan marketplaces, full stop. If you could change one thing about the industry of artisan marketplaces, what would it be?
No, it's a really good question. I would like to say that it's not full of digital. What I mean, of course, there are, of course, you make orders online, it's e-commerce, but there are not really big value of digital presence, which are quite easier to deliver, to have. I don't know what will happen this year or next year. Maybe because of AI, something is going to change, but I hope that digital presence will be also popular within people because you can just certificate, you can make AI film about other person that's so nice, so cute, it's really adorable, but nobody's doing it. And in Flower, we're also not doing it. I don't know why. No, of course I know we're not doing because the clients don't want to have it. But if yes, why not? So I would like to change this part because all what is connected with the logistic courier delivery, it's quite difficult for operation. It's quite expensive, and there are lots of problem with the couriers actually.
Yeah, and the other thing I see also is that slow digital adoption or slow e-commerce adoption, because Mexico right now in terms of e-commerce adoption is about where New Zealand was pre-COVID. So New Zealand sat at about 9% e-commerce penetration as a total, as a percentage of total retail spend. About 9% was e-commerce. Now it's about 12% in New Zealand. Mexico last year, I think, was sitting around 9%. It'll probably bump up to maybe 10 or 11% this year. So it's growing fast, but it's growing off of a very small base. Whereas if we look at the US, probably a circa 25%. If we look at China, it's like approaching 50%. If we look at Asia, full stop, somewhere between 30 and 50% of all retail spend is digital. And yet we have everyone else is somewhere between single digits and mid double digits. And so I feel like the challenge is how do we get to a place where e-commerce, full stop, is more trustworthy? How do we get to a place where people, because the reality is, if I go to any centro, if I go to any, if I go to any small town, any pueblito in Mexico, and I go to any small town square, I will see 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old people sitting in the town square on their smartphone. So the reality is, everybody has access to the internet, and the internet is very cheap here through Telcel, for example. It's going to cost you $20 a month, less than $20 a month for seven gig worth of 5G connectivity here. So it's just not that expensive. And so almost everybody, even if they're not wealthy, almost everybody can buy a cheap Android smartphone in Mexico. Almost everybody. Not everybody, but almost everybody. And so for that reason, I feel connectivity isn't the issue. It is trust that is the issue. And so I feel like overcoming the trust issues, particularly in low trust regions and countries like Latin America, I feel like overcoming the trust problem is the number one issue to solve for before we can see mass adoption of digital solutions. Full stop. Whether that's self-service e-commerce websites, whether that's e-commerce for B2B, whether that's e-commerce through marketplaces, through mobile apps, through social media, I think we just have to overcome the trust issue. That's the single biggest problem.
Actually, I would say that it should depend on the market because I don't know much about Mexico, about Latam, but I know much about Europe, about East Europe, about the region, for example. Now I'm living in the United Kingdom in London, and for me here is the biggest problem to order something. It's the first thing is the price because Amazon here is really expensive. When I open Amazon and when I open Temu, for example, price is quite difficult. And the second thing is about the delivery terms, because there are some countries where you can get almost everything in this day just in 2 maybe 3 hours in big cities. But for example in UK it's quite difficult. I need to order for 2 days, for 3 days in a week, and I need to I can't find the slot, that delivery slot that suits me really good. And I don't know when the courier when the courier comes, because for example I have spending lots of time at home and it's not a big problem for me, but for the people who are going to their work it's quite difficult because the courier can come any time of the day. It can be morning, day, afternoon, or even in the evening, it doesn't matter, and you can't predict it. That is the big problem. So I think that e-commerce is going to be more and more popular when delivery companies, so when people would like to have a better service, when they want and when they get opportunities to understand when delivery could be, that it could be really fast, for example, in 15 minutes, in 30 minutes, like Glow, like Volt, like Uber Eats, for example, work. So it's really easy and it's user friendly. And of course, as I said before, it's the price. I know what's happening with Amazon in the United Kingdom, but it's a really expensive thing here.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing. Once you've earned the trust of people, and once you have any kind of monopoly power, then that's when you can raise prices because you are the dominant player in a market. So you no longer have to be the cheapest. You just have to continue to be better than everyone else. And I guess that's where Amazon is at now, which is why they can raise their prices, because you can almost guarantee with Amazon that something is going to get to you. It's going to get to you quickly. It's trustworthy. If you have a problem, you're going to be able to return it free of charge. You're going to be able to get a refund within days, not weeks or months. So they've built up enough trust to where they can charge a premium for that trust, right? And so I think that's the struggle that everyone else has competing against Amazon, is they already have the trust, whereas you're trying to build the trust. It takes time. It's not something you can build overnight.
Yeah, and actually in Flowers there is the same thing about the trust, because if the client is not happy with us, is not happy with our seller, we will make the full refund if the client wants it. So there is no problem at it at all, because it's our marketing cost. We're bringing it there because we want the client to be happy and we want client to come back to us. That is the reason. And we can make some changes with our seller, we can communicate them, we can have a fine for him, but not for the client. Client will be happy.
Totally. Listen, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. I will drop a link to your LinkedIn profile and to the Flowwow website in the show notes. Other than that, if anybody has a business or they're operating in Europe or the Middle East and they want to learn more about Flowwow, what is the best way to get a hold of you and learn more?
I think it's really nice to contact me in LinkedIn. Thank you so much for it. And you can chat me anyway. Please contact me. I'll be happy to have a conversation with everyone.
I love it. I love it. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, now I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. So, Vera Modenova from Flowwow, what is your question for me today?
Yeah, I have the professional question for you. Just imagine if you could pick just one country for e-commerce, which one it would be?
You mean for me to do e-commerce in?
Yeah, yeah.
It would be the United States for me. I have a lot, I would say over 75% of my clients, because I work specifically in the B2B e-commerce space now for the last 5 years, helping manufacturers and distributors sell online. And the American market is such a weird and interesting and amazing market because they don't have the level of regulatory capture and regulatory challenges that Europe has with GDPR. And like everything in Europe is so tightly regulated that it's very difficult to operate in Europe. It is a real challenge. And in America, it is much less regulated. Obviously, you have certain regulated industries like the cannabis industry or the firearms industry or whatever. Like you have specific industries or banking, like you have specific industries that are heavily regulated in the United States. But generally speaking, trade is not that heavily regulated. So it's easier to start businesses in the US. It's less capital intensive. It's the ongoing compliance costs are lower. The risk is lower in the United States. And so businesses in the US are willing to take more risk. They're willing to take more chances. And so their focus is on what is our growth opportunity, not how do we be compliant. And so like their mindset is always how do we grow? How do we grow? How do we grow? Where is our next growth opportunity going to come from? And if you can show them areas or channels or opportunities that they're not exploiting yet because they don't have the digital capability to serve those opportunities, then they get really excited about that. And so in that sense, it's very easy to sell to American companies because they're so growth focused. Whereas selling in New Zealand or selling in Australia or selling in Europe, it's much, much harder because they are trying mostly to protect against risk instead of focusing on the opportunity. And that's the unique challenge of the rest of the world versus the United States.
Yeah, yeah, really. In the United States of America, you need money for marketing and for sales, but in Europe, you need money for accounts and for the lawyers. It's absolutely
Yeah,
true.
yeah, it's a totally different market. It's a totally different focus with a set of its own challenges. And also most European companies will prefer to do business with European technology vendors because they know that those technology vendors will help them be compliant in Europe. Whereas it's harder if you're dealing with an American technology vendor. With data sovereignty rules and the right to be forgotten and GDPR and all that stuff in Europe, that's why in Europe self-hosted technology is much more common versus SaaS in the United States. So SaaS is like the norm in the US, whereas it's a more even split between SaaS and on-prem in Europe because of the compliance difficulty.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jensen. It was perfect answer.
No worries. Listen, it was fabulous meeting you, fabulous talking to you. I wish you every success with a Flow Wow. We will get this episode out, and I really appreciate your time, and I cannot wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jason. Have a good day.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.